All right, I'm going to start this video the way I tend to go in the middle of videos. Don't freak out. This is a response to some comments I've been getting lately. I'm appealing to people who I think I can reach, so don't get offended about what I'm about to say. It's an appeal to intellect, not emotions. You can continue to virtue signal, or you can do the right thing and be effective. Your choice. If I were a conspiracy theory type, I'd swear that anti-feminists were agents of the dwark side, the radical feminist fringes of the women's movement consumed by fear, anger, and hate. These two groups sound so similar these days that they might as well be hitting themselves in the face with horseshoes. The horseshoe effect is in full effect. For some reason, many anti-feminists think it's perfectly rational to define the entirety of the modern women's movement by the actions and philosophies of its most radical non-scientific exceptions. Whether by willful ignorance or being blinded by hate and fear themselves, anti-feminists miss the point entirely. By treating the nutbags like the real feminists, they're helping them implement their radical agenda. They're helping to shout down non-radicalized feminists around the world so we can't get much done because all the oxygen is being sucked up by radicals who don't actually want change. If your issue is really just with radical third-wave feminism, why are you giving it so much attention? The rest of us could really use the help getting established as a viable alternative. By feeding that beast, you're making it stronger. Truly mainstream feminists are working with girls to build their self-esteem. We're working with adult women to encourage accountability, authenticity, and assertiveness that gets eroded by traditional female socialization. People are teaching girls in places like Afghanistan, achieving gender parity in political cabinets, and encouraging body positivity in the media. You may not like the way individual activists and educators do these things, but I think we can agree that the attempts are in general good things. And they're certainly not harmful. We rarely hear about these activities in the press, however. No, we hear about things like rape culture, which is just a colloquial phrasing that doesn't have an agreed upon definition. Sure, it describes a collection of things that do in fact exist, but when you make up a shocking term like rape culture, it implies blame shared by all men. It's fun to scream about this stuff in college. Trust me, I did it. But in the real world, it's not productive. And that's the problem. None of this screaming is productive. The rad fem anti-feminist blood war is anti-progress, anti-intellectual, and amoral. It accomplishes nothing but the perpetuation of itself. It's easy to complain. It's easy to criticize. But the anti-feminist criticisms in their current form, they lack substance. For example, a common criticism consists of anti-feminists repeating the most ludicrous kill all men statements of the radfems and proclaiming their inherent stupidity. What they don't convey is an argument that a stupid statement is an inherently harmful statement. Unless someone actually goes on a murder spree, free speech applies. Arguments like this are weak. Worse, they benefit the other side because they're repeating the radical statements that are used as recruitment tools. Radical feminism, like all radical ideologies, catches people at low points when they feel angry, hurt, and alone. This anti-feminist tendency to mock feminists reminds people who are hurting that the world is an inherently aggressive place, and they seek out radical groups that will give them some semblance of protection and belonging. It doesn't matter, as some claim, that a relatively small portion of America self-identifies as feminist. Even fewer Americans identify as evangelical Christians, but we all know that the evangelical movement has a lot of power. Because evangelicals have the ability to get their message out, and their message is that traditional Christian values are under attack, people join the fight for morality itself. This is the radical feminist message as well. Instead of debating the real issues surrounding women in the workforce, the lack of family leave for workers of all genders, and the extremely serious issues involving women's safety around the world, the media, both mainstream and alternative, is fighting over radicalized nonsense. In doing so, the media has perpetuated the lie that radical feminism is real feminism, and it isn't. Radicalism is always a funhouse mirror of the core of a movement. There's a reason we talk about that horseshoe effect. And it's odd to me that both radfems and anti-feminists are blind to the horseshoe effect that they're perpetuating. They sound more like each other than any moderates, either among feminists or the so-called men's right camp, advocating for more resources for suicide prevention and military support. I say so-called because the legitimate grievances that men's advocates have don't have anything to do with rights, and they have everything to do with psychological supports in male-dominated areas. This is opposed to the legitimate rights that certain regressive lawmakers are attempting to deny women, mostly in regards to bodily autonomy. There is a larger persistent effort in government to overturn Roe versus Wade than to get rid of Citizens United. Funding for the Zika virus has been stalled because of the fight over Planned Parenthood. Some people in power still don't believe that a woman can be raped by her own husband. This is here, in North America, not some faraway place. No matter how much education has been attempted, we still have cops telling women that the risk of rape is based on how they dress. These are legitimate denial of rights that go even further in other parts of the world, and I think that reasonable, rational people can agree that there's still work to be done in this regard. The fact that some men get sexually assaulted too doesn't negate this fact. It should make for a stronger impetus to get to work on this. Many so-called anti-feminists don't object to public safety issues, but when I point out that sexual assault reduction has been a feminist issue for 40 years, they start quoting Dworkin, as if Andrea Dworkin and her acolytes own the desire that fewer people get raped. How does this make the world one bit better? The Dwork side has done a lot to make feminism look stupid, no denying that. But Dworkin was never the most mainstream voice in feminism, nor was she terribly strong on policy. If anti-feminists truly don't oppose women and only oppose what they perceive to be mainstream modern feminist rhetoric, then I don't understand why they focus on fringe comments that were never mainstream in the first place. I understand concerns about some of the things that Lena Dunham has said, because she's a celebrity with influence on young women. But Dworkin? Dworkin's work was an intellectual herpes sore that managed to scream and whisper at the same time. And Lena Dunham is a minority even in Hollywood. Beyonce, Katy Perry, Taylor Swift, and Nicki Minaj embody versions of feminism that dwarf Dunham's reach. The most influential feminist in modern media may be Ellen DeGeneres, because she appeals to a daytime housewife audience. So the tactic that will best contain Lena Dunham's sillier pronouncements is simple. Don't repeat them. And this is the point where an anti-feminist will often bring up the joke that is modern feminist academia. This ignores the larger fact that most liberal arts academia is a joke. The problem is structural. The trend that's created these cultural studies programs are called interdisciplinary studies, which cherry pick things from various subjects to create narratives. It would be more productive to integrate works by and about women, gay people, people of different races, and indigenous cultures into the broader curriculum of sociology, anthropology, literature, history, and political science. But there's more short-term money in signing undergraduates up for junk bachelor degrees. Of course, what these special interest structures do is attract radicals to teach these courses, which means only radicals continue to take these courses. There's absolutely nothing tempering the politics or opening up the echo chamber. Now, that doesn't mean there's no value in feminist study. Just instead of locking it up in a ghetto, universities should be insisting on legitimacy by making it part of larger faculties. What the pop stars are required to do that academics aren't is produce product in a greater context. Singers have to produce music that's more than a message to be relevant. They have to produce music that sells. Ironically, Lena Dunham is on one of the major media outlets anywhere that doesn't have to worry about ratings or advertisers. HBO, like Netflix, makes money by selling subscriptions. The last few seasons of Girls got pretty terrible ratings, but it didn't matter because it won awards. Girls isn't a populist show. It's the definition of elitist. In other words, anti-feminists don't need to worry about girls when it comes to the hearts and minds game. They should be more concerned about CoverGirl ads if they want to contain the spread of feminism. Oh wait, right, the feminists in the CoverGirl ads aren't real feminists. Says who? The only reason people like me have trouble getting messages out is that everyone is more interested in repeating the garbage spewed by the lunatic fringe. That annoying woman in your office who claims everything is sexist got that way through a lack of an alternative that she could access that would address her legitimate concerns. Again, I'm saying this because I'm attempting to overcome my own immediately defensive reaction when confronted by a person who claims to be anti-feminist. This right here is an attempt to meet people with opposing views halfway. You know, that thing that anti-feminists claim feminists don't do. I understand the aversion some have to feminism because I feel it whenever someone says they're an anti-feminist. I'm attempting to see past the label and look at the substance of the complaints. In return, I challenge anti-feminists to stop fixating on what they oppose and start focusing on issues that we can agree to work on together. If you really want to dismantle radical feminism, that's the best way to do it. I'm tired of hearing about the dork side. I'm tired of hearing about that instead of getting information on what these anti-feminists really want beyond hating on conveniently female targets. Progress is not defined by what you oppose. Progress is defined by where you want to go. Angry people exist in all movements, and they shouldn't be allowed to hijack the dialogue. But radical feminists did precisely that by demanding inclusion in the second wave, screaming that they were no-platformed, and then they no-platformed the opposition the minute they got a meaningful seat at the table. By making the radicals the true feminists, the anti-feminist movement is pretty much guaranteed that the very people they despise will have the most power within the movement. Which hasn't destroyed feminism, it's just made everything harder. You can't destroy feminism because it's simply a piece of the larger concept that all people are created equal in the eyes of a fair society. Whatever it ends up being called, work advocating for women and girls will continue. People have been trying to stop that work for over 100 years. Where did that get us? Our current presidential candidates. Unless you really want women out of the workforce, the ballot box, and the media, then your best tactic is to promote concepts and people you mostly agree with, instead of just mocking the personalities you oppose. Just saying a viewpoint is stupid isn't enough, unless you can provide facts that contradict that viewpoint. Anti-feminists in general don't do a good job outlining the harm a line like "kill all men" does. They don't point out that men are killing themselves in frighteningly large numbers and that oppressing your oppressor doesn't end oppression. They just say, Andrea Dworkin said "kill all men, what a bitch!" It just makes these anti-feminists seem like they're scared of trash talk, or like they can't really make a sound argument. But it also puts the world on notice that a great way to troll an anti-feminist is to just repeat the things they don't like, because it drives them crazy. I don't have any issue with opposition to sex-negative, regressive gender politics. I object to cheesy tactics and personal attacks, no matter how right someone thinks they are. I can't work with someone with an inherently negative mindset, and I can't have a constructive dialogue with someone whose followers call me names related to lady parts in a chat, web forum, or private conversations. People like that don't want to talk. They want blood. It isn't enough to criticize people. For progress to happen, we need to offer viable alternatives. Do nothing, things are fine, is not a viable alternative because the only constant is change. Online culture is fixated on criticism, and that's become an impediment to action. But it's easy to criticize instead of putting in the work. It's easier and quicker to tear things down instead of building things up. I think many anti-feminists are actually good people who just have bad activist habits. Yes, there are some who have ill intents, but I need to believe they're the minority, because otherwise, yikes. Feminism is the same way. Most people are well-meaning, a minority are predators. And I'm tired of outside forces giving the predators more power. If you wonder why certain personalities end up on talk shows, it's because you put them there through a wave of outrage and controversy. The rest of us desperately need your help to get our alternative viewpoints out. But you're too busy raising the Q score of a person you despise. Ask yourself, do you want to be angry or do you want to be productive? Where are your solutions? Where are your suggestions? How are you helping? Or are you just tearing people down? Free speech includes people you can't stand, but free speech doesn't mean you have to give them attention. If you can't say a single positive thing about someone you oppose, your perspective is faulty. At the very least, these people you hate are very good at media relations and credit where credit is due. If you're attacking ideas, not people, then there's no need to feel hate. In order to be effective, you have to approach these problems through a place of inner strength. It's important to keep in mind that you probably don't personally know these people, so you can't like or dislike them as people. If you still feel that burning hatred, that says a lot more about you than it does about them. I say this as someone who's utterly despised by large portions of the internet, and I don't recognize the person they claim I am. I can only assume they're just mirroring a piece of themselves. So my challenge to anti-feminists who watch this channel and who follow me on various social media is to tell me, what are you for? What change do you want to bring to the world? Or are you just really angry?